What do megalithic cosmic clocks, declassified protocols for astral travel, and the Schumann resonance of the Earth have in common? The winter solstice, a story that weaves the freedom of your consciousness into the fabric of the cosmos. Ancient cultures already knew this secret. Science has confirmed it, and the US military conducted decades of CIA classified research to test it. Turns out the Pentagon is really into out-of-body experiences. And yeah, they found out it works. I'm Joy, your host of the Future Lore, where week after week, we explore mystery with curiosity and joy. And as you hear these words, this is happening in your body right now, whether you're paying attention or not. So, hit that like button, subscribe, and follow me into this season of darkness. Imagine this. You're lying in bed during the longest night, and a wild feeling hits you. And for a moment, just a moment, it feels like you're falling upward, like gravity reversed. And something inside you knows that it can leave, and the only thing holding you back is a thread that you can almost feel fraying. And then something shifts and suddenly you're back, anchored to the mattress, heavier than ever. And you might think, that was weird. Maybe I need more vitamin D. You're definitely not thinking, oh, maybe that was my soul trying the door handle. The truth is that humans have always felt restless, yet heavy during solstice season. And it isn't just a feeling. Declassified research into astral travel connects to something radical. Maybe ancient cultures didn't build huge monuments just to worship the sun. Maybe they built them to engineer out-of-body experiences. Why go to all that trouble? Because it's worth it. And why else would control systems try to erase it? But this knowledge didn't disappear. It went underground, into alchemy, into shamanic traditions, into research and classified programs that kept it alive, waiting for you and others like you to access a much larger pattern of human capacity and power that can't be controlled, monitored, metered, or taxed. We're almost to the winter solstice, and we don't have much time until this portal is fully open. So let's find out what we've always known, but forgotten. Newgrange, Ireland, 5,200 years old. Not a tomb, not a temple, a precision instrument built to capture a single moment once per year. At the winter solstice sunrise, a beam of light penetrates the darkness through a stone passage, and then it reaches the inner chamber. For 17 minutes, no more, no less, sunlight illuminates the back wall in a perfect golden rectangle. Then it's gone. The chamber remains sealed in blackness for the next 364 days. The builders carve triple spirals into the stone. Researchers propose these spirals symbolize eternity, rebirth, and a journey into the womb of the earth. So basically, they were saying, go into the darkness and come out reborn. The passage itself, designed as a descent into darkness and then illumination, a transformation. And this chamber is like a sensory deprivation tank. No outside sound penetrates these walls. No sense of time, no Wi-Fi, just you, the void, and standing wave resonance, documented by researchers. The stone itself amplifies certain frequencies. Imagine standing inside that passage while stone carries a message of sound to your nervous system. Michael J. O'Kelly, the archaeologist who discovered this alignment, wrote The precision exceeds Roman astronomical methods by 3,000 years. These builders understood something about frequency and the precise moment when the sun seems to stand still. And it only works on one day. Kind of seems like it might be marking something really important. "3,000 years later, across the world in Siberia, the Evenki people developed a winter solstice ritual they called the Dream Hunt. No contact with Ireland, no shared knowledge, but the same timing and the same understanding. In 1914, ethnographers documented that for 3 days around the December solstice, an Evenki shaman would enter a darkened tent for what sounds like the worst camping trip ever. No fire, no food, minus 40 degrees. At that point, your consciousness might leave your body just to escape the cold. But the Evenki believed that the soul cord between consciousness and the body grew thin and elastic during the solstice and could leave to hunt for answers. They felt that thread fraying. So they cut holes in their tents for souls to exit and return. The protocol was systematic, and the outcome was consistent. The shaman could leave the body and access what the later documents of the gateway process called the absolute, to travel upper and lower worlds and return with knowledge, healing, and guidance, gifts for their community. And in North America, the Crow Nation built dream houses, small lodges covered in buffalo hides, specifically for winter solstice vision quests. Young men fasted for 4 days, then entered the lodge. Complete isolation, sensory deprivation, darkness. But they weren't doing this alone. The entire community gathered. They held space. They understood that this was something worth protecting and passing down across centuries, waiting for those who needed it. They stayed until the young men found their star, a vision that would guide their life. 80% of them left their bodies. That's not a fluke, and that's not luck. That's a protocol that works. 4 out of 5 young men lying in the darkness of the solstice window. They all went somewhere and came back different. Not just with visions, with direction, with a purpose to follow for the rest of their lives. And here's what matters for our story. Their quests outside the solstice window mostly failed. The timing wasn't secondary. It was primary. It was everything. And these are just a few examples. Every ancient culture that had stone to carve and stars to read marked the solstice like they were all getting the same collective message. And what they decided to do with that message was deliberate, precise, and expensive. Stonehenge in England, Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, in Egypt, the Temple of Dendera, Machu Picchu in Peru. But it wasn't only marked in stone. Across continents, cultures also developed rituals around the solstice moment. In China, Dongji festivals marked the turning point. The Hopi held Soya Luna, with dream journeys and rhythmic chanting that lasted through the night. The Iroquois gathered at dawn to share visions and plan for the returning light, accompanied by drumming and communal singing. So here's what we know from the record. Ancient cultures across the world, with no contact, developed rituals tied to the solstice. Rhythmic sound, drumming, chanting, humming, woven throughout. And the outcome was consistent. Consciousness could separate from the body and move beyond the physical. They all saw the same pattern. Darkness precedes transformation. The longest night shifting to the return of the light, winter before spring, death to rebirth, not a void, a threshold. And the alchemists mapped the same stages of transformation. The nigredo, the blackening, wasn't poetic language, but a description of ego death. The darkness, a necessary condition for the dissolution of the false self. They wrote it down, systemizing what the ancients had discovered through ritual, and protected it fiercely. They all knew the long nights around the winter solstice aren't meant to be empty. If you're ready, this is an open portal for the mechanism of consciousness. They couldn't explain it, but they went to great lengths because it worked. So let's find out the how and the why. The Earth's magnetic field is shaped by the sun's radiation and solar wind, a constant electromagnetic barrage that fills the year with noise. But at the solstice, the Earth's axial tilt reaches its extreme. The northern hemisphere tilts away from the sun at a maximum angle. This changes how solar radiation hits the ionosphere. It changes the angle at which solar wind interacts with the Earth's magnetosphere. The result? The usual electromagnetic noise lowers. The ionosphere settles, a signal emerging from the static. And that signal is the Schumann resonance, the Earth's fundamental frequency. It amplifies, forming standing waves at specific frequencies, creating a global electromagnetic heartbeat shared by everything on the planet. And this particular thing doesn't happen at the equinox, other astronomical events, or even randomly. It happens at the solstice every year, consistently, because the mechanism is geometric. The Earth's tilt, the sun's position. These create predictable states that recur annually at the same moment. This resonance is the fundamental reason the door to astral travel opens wider now than at any other time of year. And not metaphorically, physically. Our bodies are part of this planetary system. Your brainwaves operate at different frequencies. Most of your life is spent in beta, 13 to 30 hertz. That's 13 to 30 times a second, the wave going up and down. This is when you're alert, anxious, checking your phone. Then alpha, a little more relaxed, what you pay your yoga instructor for. That's like 9 to 12 hertz. And then delta, from about half a hertz to 4, are the long, slow waves of precious, deep sleep. But theta, at 4 to 8 hertz, that's the liminal sweet spot between waking and sleeping. The gateway portal, where your consciousness is basically like, I'm out of here, and chooses the red pill. Theta is where the boundary between consensus reality and the etheric goes porous. And it also just so happens to align with the natural resonant frequency of the Earth, the Schumann resonance that we mentioned before, at 7.83 hertz. Why would this matter? Because inside your brain, in the cerebellum and brainstem, there are magnetite nanoparticle crystal structures made of iron oxide, like tiny compasses embedded in your nervous system, responding to geomagnetic shifts, sending information directly to your nervous system. And you also have cryptochromes, light-sensitive and magnetic field-sensitive proteins in your retina. When the geomagnetic resonance amplifies and light hits your eyes, your cryptochromes activate, synchronizing your body's internal clock to the Earth's magnetic field. And then your pineal gland, what some call the third eye, also contains these magnetic crystals. When darkness and geomagnetic resonance align, your pineal gland responds, causing your melatonin production to surge. And it's not just a sleep hormone. Melatonin is structurally similar to DMT, which might explain why dreams are so weird. High concentrations facilitate lucid, non-waking states. This is the chemical pathway for dreaming while awake, and it's magnetically sensitive. And then your heart is full of neurons too, sending signals up the vagus nerve to your brain. Normally, your heartbeat creates interference patterns, pressure waves traveling down your aorta, colliding with waves traveling back up, creating noise. But in a state of quiet relaxation, that noise can fade. Your heart can settle into a coherent rhythm that travels through your circulatory system and into your brain through fluid-filled ventricles. And this sets up a standing acoustical wave that vibrates coherently at, you guessed it, theta, 7 to 7.5 hertz or so. So your mind, heart, and the planet lock into resonance. They're vibrating at the same frequency. When that happens, you're no longer separate from the Earth's electromagnetic field. You're part of it. And the question becomes, can we artificially create these conditions? What if we could trigger out-of-body experiences anytime, anywhere, without waiting for the solstice? The military asked the same question, and they found an answer. Now, the military got to astral travel not with particular understanding of the winter solstice, but through systematic experimentation to create psychic spies. They were trying to solve a problem. How do you gather knowledge by accessing information beyond the physical? How do you weaponize consciousness? In 1983, Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonnell wrote a report on the Gateway experience that was classified by the CIA until 2003. The report outlined a training system developed by Robert Monroe to enable remote viewing of specified targets by astral travel. What McDonnell realized in the course of understanding how the Gateway process worked was that this wasn't mystical, but mechanical, repeatable, and most importantly, it was trainable. The protocol uses Hemi-Sync, or binaural beats. So you put on headphones, and one ear receives 100 hertz, and the other 108 hertz. And your brain doesn't hear two tones. Instead, it detects the difference between them, 8 hertz. And your brain creates a phantom frequency of theta, the gateway state. Then your brain automatically syncs. They called it a frequency following response, when the waves mimic the frequency that it hears. Biology as reliable as gravity, predictable and measurable. So using Hemi-Sync, they would entrain the left and right hemisphere of the brain into coherent waves of theta. Consciousness would expand, and the boundaries of normal awareness dissolve. This would be moving into what Gateway calls Focus 10, mind awake, body asleep, the threshold to the unified field that includes but extends infinitely beyond the physical body. The success rates for getting through that threshold varied, not randomly, but systematically. Operatives reported higher success rates during specific windows, specific times, specific conditions. And the CIA noticed the pattern. Timing was everything. And it wasn't just about technique. It was about when you used it. Why would this matter if it works? Because what enables consciousness to separate isn't just theta brainwaves. When your brain and the Earth lock on to the same carrier wave, something happens at the quantum level. Your consciousness begins oscillating at an extremely high frequency. According to quantum mechanics, Any oscillating pattern reaches 2 points of complete rest at each boundary, the extreme top and bottom of the wave. At those infinitesimal moments, when those oscillations reach below Planck's distance, which is the smallest thing we can measure or even kind of conceive, consciousness clicks out of time-space. It slips outside the dimension where normal physics applies and into what the Gateway documents call the universal hologram, a non-local field of information that contains everything: past, present, future, distant locations, classified documents, the structure of reality itself. But here's the key. This clicking out and going into the field happens more reliably when the resonance between the remote viewer and the Earth's field is strong. During the winter solstice, consciousness clicks out far more easily, more frequently, more reliably. The mechanism is built into the structure of our reality itself, and timing matters because resonance matters. This is why Theta enables astral travel. Both the solstice and the gateway work the same way. They just use different tools. The gateway documents describe consciousness as an electromagnetic energy pattern distributed across a unified field, not trapped in the brain. Distributed, non-local, capable of accessing information beyond the physical. And the military spent millions on studies that validated this across multiple operatives and controlled environments. But did it actually work? Yes. The declassified records for Project Stargate, using Monroe's gateway process, pretty much prove that Yoda was right. The Force is everywhere, and it's a physical reality. The CIA's official evaluation of Project Stargate concluded that psychic functioning was well established statistically, with results far beyond what is expected by chance. By some measures, the program reported an 89.5% operational success rate, with what intelligence analysts called 8 martini results. And if you don't know what that means, I didn't either, but actually means you gave highly accurate data. Rosemary Smith, an administrative assistant with no prior training, successfully remote viewed a crash site of a Soviet plane in Zaire, leading to invaluable intelligence discovery. And Joseph McMoneagle, a prolific remote viewer involved in hundreds of missions, accessed classified information across multiple targets. Studies conducted at Stanford Research Institute and Science Applications International Corporation showed relevant results beyond chance. But here's some information for our story today. Success rates varied with geomagnetic conditions. Operatives reported higher success during specific windows, specific times, specific conditions, and notably, when multiple operatives worked simultaneously during the same window, accuracy improved even further. They noticed the same pattern that ancient cultures discovered. Timing was everything. Why? Because inducing Theta with Hemi-Sync induces the neurological state, but resonance with the Earth's magnetic field and clicking out is still easier when the Schumann signal is strong. When geomagnetic conditions aligned, accuracy improved. When conditions were unfavorable, distortion increased. So they kept all of this classified, not because it's fake, but because it works. And because somebody standing behind a podium saying consciousness is non-local and exists outside of space and time isn't really a military vibe. All of this research confirms the point where ancient wisdom and modern science finally meet. And it's not coincidence, it's convergence. So let's look at the hard data. The declassified remote viewing experiments proved that operatives could describe secret facilities that they had never seen, down to specific file numbers in locked cabinets. By accessing what the gateway documents called the universal hologram, or the absolute. But this isn't an empty, endless white room with only you in it. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious. Quantum physicists call it non-local information fields. But it's all the same thing. A field of intelligence containing information about everything. Past, present, future, distant locations, classified documents, the structure of reality itself. This is a field that everyone can access simultaneously. And during the solstice, the geomagnetic resonance amplifies that connection point. The noise drops, and suddenly, your body locks on to the constantly moving carrier wave of awareness itself. And this is why astral travel feels like movement. Your consciousness isn't imagining going somewhere. It's left the body and is navigating through this information field into different realms or dimensions, tuning to different layers of the same broadcast. And when out-of-body experiences feel more real than waking life, it's because they are. You're accessing a fundamental layer of reality rather than just the physical surface of your perceptions. And that's really cool, but it also sounds like it could be a little lonely. But the good news, the solstice doesn't just amplify individual consciousness, it amplifies collective consciousness. During this window, when the geomagnetic field peaks, every consciousness loosens its tether to synchronize, join, and become more than the sum of its parts. The ancients understood this. They didn't perform solstice rituals alone. They gathered. They drummed and chanted in collective cohesion. When multiple streams of awareness align to the same frequency, they become entangled, accessing not just the information field, but each other, becoming part of a temporary collective, a unified field of awareness. And you've seen this concept of a hive mind in science fiction, like Stranger Things, or going all the way back to one of my childhood favorites, A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. But here's what's different. The ancient hive mind wasn't seen as parasitic or controlling. Individual awareness, choosing to synchronize, to think together, and access information collectively. It's what the ancients called communion with the divine. And that's literally quantum entanglement on a macro scale. And maybe this is really why this knowledge has been suppressed. Because a unified field of collective awareness is a threat. Systems of control depend on separation. They depend on you believing that you're isolated, powerless, and alone, which is why they're so good at making you feel that way. The moment you realize that you are connected to everyone and everything and start to act like it, each time you do, the system loses its grip on you, bit by bit. The ancients protected this knowledge. They passed it down through shamanic traditions and mystery schools because they knew consciousness meeting in the non-local field isn't only a portal to individual transformation, but multiplied becomes collective freedom. And now you understand. That feeling of falling upward, the sense that something in you wants to peace out into the cosmos on nothing but a fraying thread, that's your body detecting the signal. That's your consciousness recognizing that the portal is open. You're tuned, waking up. And you're not alone. You're connected, tapping into the same power since the beginning of time. And right now, in this solstice window, you and everyone else who's listening, we are synchronized to the same frequency, together. Take a moment to let that sink in. Not intellectually, but in your chest. Sometimes it only takes a moment for everything to shift. Your breath catches, your heartbeat accelerates, a vibration, not painful, but intense. That's your power to transcend, to access and become everything and nothing at the same time. You're still you. And suddenly your body isn't a cage. It's a vehicle within the celestial sphere, the planet itself, showing you who you really are. And as you move through the world, you make different choices because you know the consequences ripple through dimensions beyond the physical. You relate to others differently because you recognize them as part of the same unified field. You become something new, while also remaining the oldest thing in the stream of time. The absolute, experiencing itself through a body that knows how to listen. The solstice window is close, but the real portal stays open year-round. Your cryptochromes don't deactivate when the days get longer. Your magnetite nanoparticles, your pineal gland, they can sync anytime. The absolute doesn't disappear. You're always in it. You always are it. And you always have been. And now you know you always were. So here we are, at the threshold of the winter solstice, a portal that opens to everything. Have you had moments where consciousness felt less like a cage and more like an open field? Drop a comment for those of us lying in bed during the longest night feeling frayed. When you share, you create a resonance field. Others can recognize themselves in your experience, and that recognition spreads. And if you want to explore more mysteries with curiosity and joy, then like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell on YouTube. Rate, follow, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Week after week, we're weaving ancient wisdom, the latest science, and wild theories into something that can actually change how you move through the world. Remember, you are far more powerful, far more strange, and far more connected than you've ever been told. Visit thefuturelore.com to join our free community and find all of our official links, which are at thefuturelore everywhere. Thank you so much for tuning in, my loves. I'm so lucky to be here with you to embrace the mysterious and stay curious.
In the future